Welcome back to Hardball. Time now for The Fix. John Holland writes for the New York Magazine, and Melinda Henenberger is an editor at politicsdaily.com. Two heavyweights on tonight with a heavyweight question. Elections are coming up next week that could decide which way the wind's blowing. The new Quinnipiac poll from Jersey has the incumbent John Corzine leading Republican challenger Chris Christie by 5 points, with a trend line looking very good for the governor. By the way, a three-way race there with Daggett, the moderate Republican, sort of the Tom Kean type, running on the outside. He may be the killer. What do you make of that race? You first, Holman. You're from up there. What do you make of this thing?
Well, I think the Democrats would like this election to be today or a couple days from now. I mean, Daggett has been the key factor in addition to Christie's poorness as a candidate. And Daggett, the worry among Democrats and the Corzine people is that Daggett kind of peaked too soon, and that if his support recedes fast over the course of the next week, that Corzine could be in trouble. I think that race is going to be very close.
I agree, and I think Christie could pull this off if there's no organizational support for Daggett. It's one thing to do well in a poll, but when you don't have a political party behind you, forget about it. As they would say in Jersey. Let's take a look at a new poll in Virginia. I want you to lead here, Melinda. Virginia governor's race. This could be the premier race in the country because Terry McAuliffe was in that primary. He lost out to this guy, Creed Deeds, who had the endorsement of the Washington Post, who looked solid for a while and now is getting killed. He's down by 18. It looks to me like the trend line is lethal for this guy. What is going on in a state that went for Obama just a year ago? Melinda.
I think that this race will be a little bit of a referendum on Obama, but not maybe as much as Republicans would like to think. I think that it's true that maybe Obama not pulling the trigger one way or the other on Afghanistan has hurt him with that Virginia swing voter who's maybe a little bit more militaristic than swing voters elsewhere in the country. But really the problem here was not just the candidate of Creed Deeds, but his campaign being so negative in a way that I think was just a huge turnoff in a purple state like Virginia. And also when you have a guy like Deeds who's not negative by nature, I just think it was not a good fit for him. He wasn't true to himself, and that never works.
It's hard to build a whole campaign on somebody else's term paper. Anyway, let's go. I know he's going after the other guy for writing some right-wing stuff about 25 years ago. Let's take a look at the New York 23rd. Holland, this is another New York race. It's fascinating. Here's one of those crazy little races like the Battle of Gettysburg. Yeah. It's way up there north, but it's going to decide so much down here. You got Doug Hoffman running as a independent conservative, running against the incumbent or the Republican regular, and her name is Scoza Fava. She's pro-gay rights or gay marriage. She's pro-choice, et cetera, which bothers conservatives. And then you've got the Democrat over there. You've got Bill Owens, who may well scoot by both conservatives. What do you make of that race?
Well, it's a funny race. I mean, Chris, I know you want to look at the national implications here. I mean, it's a question. The Republican Party is kind of in open revolt. Scafaza, she's to the left of Owens. I mean, she's such a liberal Republican that she is, as I say, arguably more liberal than the Democrat. And you've got, I mean, just like you have in the Senate race in Florida, you've got basically a teabag candidate who's running against this Republican who's seen as an apostate. And I think it does foretell something about the kind of conflict that we're going to see in a lot of Republican races in 2010, where you have challenges from the right to anyone who's considered centrist or an apostate to the conservative line.
I think it's Tea Party, not Teabag, but you can play the game all you want here. Let me go here with, I know you're having fun with this. Let's go right, I know you are. Why is, if it's not a national race to challenge Holman there, John, why is Sarah Palin involved in this? Rick Santorum's come back from the dead to fight this, and the inimitable Michelle Bachmann all up there raising hell for this guy, Hoffman, whose name keeps escaping me. What do you make of that, Melinda?
Well, I think it's a great race. I mean, when you have the Republican candidate calling out the police for fear of being menaced by a reporter from the Weekly Standard, you know, you can't beat that. But I think they're doing, the conservatives are doing this because they can and because they want to fly the flag in this race that may not mean that much nationally. So I'm just not sure that it's going to translate into a bigger picture.
You caught my interest there. Somebody from the neoconservative Weekly Standard got physical with somebody? Explain.
They didn't get physical with somebody. The Republican candidate Scoza Fava, called the police because she felt she was being aggressed verbally by a reporter for the Weekly Standard, and so the police was called. People who saw the so-called incident said that it was perfectly civil and that the candidate just didn't like the tenor of the question.
Well, anyway, when it comes to neoconservatives, I think they do prefer verbal aggression. Anyway, not to knock it. Anyway, I like verbal aggression, too. Let's come back. We'll be back in a minute with John Heilemann and Melinda Henneberger to talk about the very tricky issue. Abortion has raised its head in this fight over health care. It could be a troubling, even defeating issue in the last couple days. Well, of course, the big games tonight. The first game of the World Series, the Philadelphia Phillies, world champions, taking on the New York Yankees. It could be the most exciting World Series in at least a decade, and very important to Philly that we win this one. Tonight, I think I'll decide it. If the Phillies win tonight, I think the odds are about even. Anyway, we're back with John Heilemann and Melinda Henneberger. We'll talk about something as desultory as abortion rights. John Heilemann, it seems to me that this issue could fold at the last minute over an issue like this. Bart Stupak of Michigan was just on. He's trying to work out a deal that allows the Hyde Amendment to take effect again, which is no federal money going to abortion. The problem is you're subsidizing plans that already include abortion coverage. I don't know how you solve this problem.
I don't know how you solve this problem either, Chris, but in terms of the details, but I think I agree with something you were saying a little earlier in the show, which is that it doesn't seem conceivable to me that this is actually the issue over which health care folds. And it just seems that the stakes are just too high. And it seems like the compromise has come around on this issue before, and I think it has to come around again. I mean, there's so much. Some of these Democrats have so much on the line in terms of health care, and the failure of it for other reasons would be so devastating at this point to the Democratic Party. I can't believe this is going to be the issue. If everything else gets solved, that this is going to be the final stumbling block. It seems crazy to me.
It seems to me that a smart conservative move or a pro-life move, Melinda, would be simply to say, take the president's language from his speech to both houses a couple weeks ago where he said there's no subsidy in this for abortion, and apply it as an amendment, that there shall be no subsidy in this bill for abortion, and then everybody has to live with it or else admit that they're basically fooling each other.
But that's what's in the bill now, in essence. There is no money in the Senate bill or the House bill for abortion, and that is already the case. I think what they want to do is go beyond what just maintaining the Hyde Amendment. They want to say that no money can go to, and not just for abortions, but to providers of abortions, which would be a huge thing to do. It would go well beyond this. But this health care is not going to end over this, because there's not going to be any money in these bills for abortion. I mean, I am where Bart Stupak is on this issue, but I do not agree with his approach with these amendments, because there's so much misinformation out there in the pro-life community about what's already in the bill that I'm not worried at all that health care is going to founder over this.
Well, here's how simple it can be. If you have an insurance program policy which covers abortion as one of the procedures that's covered, health procedures that's covered, and the government comes along and subsidizes that health plan, is that subsidizing abortion? Yes or no, Melinda? That's the issue.
It's not, but if we go that far, I mean, I just don't see how you can interpret going that far as holding the status quo on the Hyde Amendment. That's something totally different.
That's as good as I can do.
Are we only going to give money to Catholic hospitals? I don't think so.
Okay. I'm doing as best I can to clarify this issue. It's a tough one. Thank you very much, John Heilemann.
Thanks.
A lot of races up in your ballpark. It looks like Jersey. By the way, I think Christie can still win this thing, and I think that one in upstate is impossible to pick. I think all the votes are in motion up there.